I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week, we're going to be looking at 5 categories that I think are sure to win. 5 categories I'm pretty confident are going to win. Surefire locks, whatever you want to call it. But if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is predict the Oscars. In October, all the way up until the Oscar nominations, I talked about different categories, but now we're in this in-between period before the Oscars actually happen, so I do these sort of one-off videos. Of course, we're going to get the BAFTAs soon and the SAG, so I'm going to give my reactions to that, and DGA and PGA. We're really going to see the true sort of winners. We have the nominations now. It's going to see with the winners. It's a different sort of a calculus, so that's why you still have to stay tuned to the channel to hear my thoughts. But I wanted to do these 2 sister videos. Last week was 5 categories I was unsure about. Those were categories that I think I suggested to you to look at yourself and go, am I really sure about my pick? Should I think about this more? And sort of broke it down, the analysis of the 2 sides, or the 3 sides at some of those categories. But in this video, I wanted to talk about 5 categories that I was sure about, that you shouldn't be worried about. 5 categories that you really shouldn't think too in-depthly about. I did the thinking for you and came to the sort of basic, boring conclusion, but oftentimes that just ends up being right. You know, if you were to predict a movie like Cold War beating out Roma for Best International Feature back in 2018, you would have gotten it wrong, probably because you overthought it. So what's important for the Oscars is just as much of attention you pay attention to, say, the up-in-the-air categories. You should also not pay attention to certain categories and not worry about the over mental exhaustion of thinking about those categories, because they're just going to make you overthink things and lose out on dumb, easy to win categories. So these are 5 dumb, easy to win categories that I'm pretty confident, won't 100% guarantee it, but pretty close that these will win come Oscar night. My first pick is going to be Best Supporting Actor for Quan from Everything Everywhere All at Once. And the acting races this year are surprisingly unpredictable. I think a lot of the different ones, whether it be actress or actor or even supporting actress, you could give solid debates as to why the second or even the third person in betting odds could actually win. But not for this category, not for Best Supporting Actor. Quan has it sort of locked up, and I'm willing to say that even before SAG, even before BAFTA, just because I looked at his competition, I looked at what he had, and there's a great combination of he has so much going for him, and the competition is really lacking. Of course, what he has going for him is that Everything Everywhere All at Once, the movie that I was a part of, had the most nominations come Oscar night, so we know they like his movie. That's important. Oftentimes, acting winners have a Best Picture nominee. Not only does Quan have a Best Picture nominee, but a very strong one. We think that if Everything Everywhere All at Once is the frontrunner to win, at least as of right now, it should win a supporting actor, a screenplay, and then a picture. That's a clear sort of a path to a win, so they definitely need this win. He's been campaigning, he's been out there a lot, so he has both the narrative and both the great performance in a movie that is well liked. He has the narrative of, hey, this is a kid actor from the Indiana Jones movies. He's back, he's giving this great performance. He was sort of refound himself again with acting, and he's this great kind of a story and a narrative that people can latch onto and feel good about voting. But then also, they really like his movie. They also like his movie, they like his performance. He's central to that. He's a supporting actor, but he's in a good bit of the movie. That helps too. He's become frequently the face of the movie, and if this is the potential path for the movie to win, I think he wins here. So he's got all these things going for him, the narrative, the strength of the movie. He's been campaigning, doing everything right. But then also you look at his competition, and he has weak competition. You could say, could it be Brendan Gleeson? I don't think so, just because his co-star in Barry Keoghan was nominated for the Banshees of Inisherin as well. So I think there's going to be support for that movie, but split between 2 people. You could say, hey, what about Brian Tyree Henry for Causeway? I think his nomination was his win. Very few people saw Causeway and got no other nominations, so that would be a definite surprise. And then what about Judd Hirsch, who I actually think could probably be the number 2 possibility. If you think something like The Fabelmans would win Best Picture, that it could go Hirsch for a supporting actor, maybe screenplay, picture, or maybe just Hirsch, director, picture for The Fabelmans. But then I would go, well, why wasn't Hirsch nominated at SAG? Why wasn't The Fabelmans, why did it underperform in terms of the technical categories? Why was it snubbed completely at BAFTA? If The Fabelmans was so well liked, why wasn't Dano nominated as well? The truth of the matter is that the Best Supporting Actor category, if you look at Critics' Choice, Quan beat out the 5 nominees he's facing here. He beat them out at Critics' Choice. Golden Globes, he beat out 3 of the nominees that occurred here. He won at Golden Globe. So he's been beating out his competition in the early indicative acting awards. He's got all these things going for him. His competition is weak. There's no clear sort of a frontrunner to win, and I think regardless of even if Everything Everywhere All at Once wins for Best Picture, I think the support at the very least will go to him for Best Supporting Actor. Then the second category I think is an absolute lock, is Best Animated Feature, and the winner will be Pinocchio. There was a little bit of a caution and hesitation when I first saw the nominations and reacted live on the channel, which you can go back and see my Andre Rise World True Live reaction, or even some of the Alexander Desplat disappointments from Pinocchio. There was a little bit of a concern because it missed out on Best Original Song, because it missed out on Best Score. So you may think, well, Connor, doesn't that mean it's vulnerable? Not necessarily. Yes, it did underperform, but the truth of the matter is that it was actually considered in those categories. It was considered in song. It was considered in score. It got other nominations at award shows like BAFTA, where it got for score and best production design. So we know it has support from other branches of the Academy, but the animation, but for, it didn't get in some of the music categories. But at the end of the day, people who vote on the Oscars, they vote in every single category. You don't have to be part of the animation branch to vote on the animated movies. So you can still vote for Pinocchio there if you liked its production design and you're an art director. You'll probably appreciate a stop motion film like Pinocchio there. Furthermore, the movie won at Critics' Choice and Golden Globes. If you look at the past 10 years, all animated movies that won the Critics' Choice Award and the Golden Globe Awards went on to win the Oscar. So Inside Out wins both, Soul wins both, it ultimately ends up winning at the Oscars. So even if BAFTA goes its own way, I still think that you can rely on those two groups being very indicative when combined together in terms of predicting the winner. When we've seen certain upsets or unsureties, Claus versus Toy Story 4, in years like that, there was a little bit split amongst all the groups, but because they had this combination of Golden Globes and Critics' Choice, that really helps Pinocchio. I also think it's going to win at BAFTA, so when it does win at BAFTA, then there's going to be no concern at all. But even if something else does win at BAFTA, I'm still pretty confident Pinocchio would win. And of course, the final big point why I'm confident in this film is that it's from Guillermo del Toro. It's being branded as Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And having an auteur live-action director known for their live-action stuff, then coming to the animated category, oftentimes works more than it doesn't. Just because you have directors like George Miller winning for Happy Feet. They know him as a great director. Then he goes to animated. There's a sense of prestige and respectability and name brand that you can attach to the director. And the same way Wes Anderson does his first animated feature in Fantastic Mr. Fox, wins there. I think Guillermo del Toro, let's not forget, he is just 5 years removed from winning Best Director at the Oscars for The Shape of Water, which of course also won Best Picture. And his movie last year, Nightmare Alley, got a surprise Best Picture nomination. Why? Because he campaigns well. He's very liked within the Academy. He's a very likable person. He's been campaigning for Pinocchio. Even though it got disappointments in a couple categories, it still should win for Best Animated Feature. Then the third category that I think is an absolute lock is Best Visual Effects for Avatar: The Way of Water. Well, the film underperformed in terms of nominations on Oscar morning. It got into Best Picture, which was incredibly necessary for this category. It probably would have won Best Visual Effects without a Best Picture nominee, but because it got in for Best Picture, that just makes me even more sure that it's going to win. Why? Because there's a direct correlation between VFX winners and Best Picture nominees. If there is a Best Picture nominee in the visual effects category, it almost always wins. There's been one exception, which is 2015, in which there was a couple Best Picture nominees, and I went to Ex Machina, kind of an out there surprise. That's an exception, not a rule. And even in years in which the VFX category has no Best Picture nominees, oftentimes the winner goes to the movie that's the most Best Picture-like, or the movie with the most nominations. So First Man has multiple nominations and beats out a movie like Avengers Infinity War that only has that one visual effects nomination. In the same way, Blade Runner 2049 has multiple nominations, beats out a movie like War of the Planet of the Apes. Even though War of the Planet of the Apes, incredible, incredible effects, maybe recognition for the trilogy, they still went with Blade Runner 2049. So when we look at this group, we have to go, okay, well, who are the Best Picture nominees? And then you go, oh, wait, Connor, there's actually 3. Top Gun Maverick, All Quiet on the Western Front, and Avatar. Why are you so confident it's Avatar and not one of those 2? Well, that's a good point. At this point, we're a little bit more in the subjective analysis, because I can't necessarily say that, oh, Avatar is the only Best Picture nominee, therefore it's going to get in, lock it, because there is a chance they could go to All Quiet on the Western Front or Top Gun Maverick. But in the abstract, sort of more subjective thinking, I think it makes a lot of sense to go Avatar. Why? Well, first of all, Avatar's appeal is its visual effects. You go to the theater, you put on the 3D glasses, you get immersed into it. The appreciation of that movie is the effects in the world that's being built. That's the main thing of the movie. When you think of that movie, you think of that. And then you look at the other potential winners, Top Gun Maverick or All Quiet on the Western Front. And in the recent years, we've seen the Oscars really like to spread the love. That is, they like to give every Best Picture nominee at least one award. Well, you look at All Quiet on the Western Front, it should win a Best International Feature. I also think it's going to win for Best Cinematography. So there are those two competitive wins. It doesn't need to win this category too. Same thing with Top Gun Maverick. I think it's going to win editing and sound. But even if you don't think it's going to win for Best Editing, I think a lot of people are confident it will win for Best Sound. It wins there. So what's Avatar going to win? Well, it's not going to win for Best Sound if it's going to go to Top Gun Maverick. So its best chance, I think, is in Best Visual Effects, because it doesn't have all these nominations that they could win in all these categories. This is its best shot. With the Oscars liking to spread the love, with the appeal of the visual effects in Avatar, with the strength of the Best Picture nominee, Avatar: The Way of Water should be a lock for Best Visual Effects. And speaking of All Quiet on the Western Front, that is the movie that will win the category number 4 on my list that I think is an absolute lock, which is Best International Feature. Of course, it makes complete sense, and I don't want to over talk about this category too much just because it's pretty obvious, right? It got nominated for Best Picture. It was the only international feature that got nominated for Best Picture, therefore it should win Best International Feature, right? That being said, I see a lot of people on the internet or even in their predictions sort of overthink this, and they go, does anyone feel like this could maybe be something else? And then I saw same people also predict Cold War over Roma, or not predict Parasite in the year that it won for dumb reasons. Because for a lot of people, they go back and they just look at and they do cursory research and they go, hey Connor, what about Amelie? What about Pan's Labyrinth? Those were movies that got nominated for Best International Feature, that got a bunch of other nominations, but didn't win that category. Shouldn't that also make us a little bit cautious of something like All Quiet on the Western Front potentially missing? No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because what you're overlooking is the fact that in those years, the international feature category, which was called the foreign film category, used different voting, in which you would have to watch all 5 of the nominees before actually making your prediction. You would actually have to prove that you watch all 5 of the nominees before making it. And because of that, because not everyone did that, it had some unpredictabilities because of that. They got rid of that rule. That was a rule back then. The modern day system that rewarding movies like Roma and Parasite has gotten rid of that. So you don't even have to watch all the Best International Features. So if you're a person that appreciates the cinematography of James Friend, or the production design, or the score, you can vote for international feature without watching all 5 of the nominees. So I think it's a little bit lazy for people to go, oh, what about Amelie or what about Pan's Labyrinth? Either because they don't know about it or because they're not interested in doing the extra research. I did the extra research. I think it's a lazy argument because you're disregarding the fact that those were different rules back then, which had those moments. I sort of counter and go, what about Roma? What about Parasite? We've had these recent years, even another round with Thomas Vinterberg getting in for Best Director. We've had these sort of history now of the Best Picture nominees or strong Best Picture winners winning international feature. Don't overthink it. All Quiet on Western Front is going to win Best International Feature. Then the final category I'm going to be analyzing is Best Sound from Top Gun Maverick. And while we haven't had BAFTAs yet, or the Cinema Audio Society, and we get to see surprises there, I still think Top Gun Maverick is going to win. I'm going to go on a bit of a limb and say it's going to win both those categories and should win at the Oscars for a lot of reasons. First of all, when you think of the Best Sound category, oftentimes that links to Best Editing. Top Gun Maverick, I think, is the frontrunner to win for Best Editing. I think it's also the frontrunner here to win for Best Sound. For some more abstract reasons, because we don't have those precursors to lean on, but logical, abstract kind of analysis. That being of what I mentioned earlier, the fact that the Oscars usually like to spread out the awards. If you're nominated for Best Picture, they like to give at least one competitive win to you somewhere. Top Gun Maverick, if you don't think it's going to win for Best Editing, it's not nominated for Best Cinematography. Maybe song or visual effects or screenplay, probably not. They're not competitive there. What is competitive? Best Sound. And what's going to be indicative this year is, of course, BAFTA, which it will be important, but also the Cinema Audio Society, because their exact 5 nominees for their big live action award is also exactly lined up with the 5 nominees at the Oscars, so that could be indicative there. You can also look at the Motion Picture Sound Editors Guild, but they have a little bit more spread out. So I do think Top Gun Maverick's going to do well in all 3 of those categories, winning BAFTA, winning CS, and then getting a couple wins at the Motion Picture Sound Editors, because The Oscars, of course, like to spread that vote around. I think other award shows will like to do that too. But also, when you think of the movie, similarly with Avatar, you think of visual effects. When I think of Top Gun, I think of that sound. A lot of people saw Top Gun and Maverick in the theaters with the loud, booming engines of the jets, of the music. It is this immersive experience, and because a lot of people watch in the theater, they hear that sound a lot better, a lot crisper than they would, on their own TV at home. So there's an appreciation there. And, of course, when we're talking about the best sound category, we also have to talk about the historical precedent of there used to be best sound editing and best sound mixing categories. And in the past 2 years, it was merged into one category, best sound. And what do we learn from those past 2 years? The winners being Dune and Sound of Metal. Those are two winners that I would describe as best sound editing winners. Usually the sound editing winners would be the war movies, the action movies, and the mixing winners would be the musicals or the music-based films. So we look at the past two winners, they've been sort of sound editing type winners. Well, what's Top Gun Maverick? A sound editing type of a winner, because it's kind of a war-ish movie, has those planes and the loud sort of booming aspect to it. I think they're going to want to reward Top Gun Maverick something. I think this is an easy one that they can just give it to for the sound of the jets, and because there's no other competitors that they feel like they need to give the award to. They don't need to give it to Elvis because they're probably going to give it to in production design or maybe even best actor. They don't need to give it to All Quiet on the Western Front. They don't need to give it to Avatar. It's a clear one to go, hey, Top Gun Maverick will give you a win here and satisfy you here, even if you don't win in some of the other categories. But that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please stay tuned to next week. Subscribe to the channel where I'm going to give my reactions to the BAFTA Awards and the DGA Awards. DGA, I think, is going to tell us a lot. So is BAFTA. But of course, I'm going to talk about that and analyze it and try to parse out what we have to take seriously, what we don't have to take seriously. That kind of analysis and reasoning to help you ultimately make your best productions possible. That's why I subscribe to the channel. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.